Welcome to the Road Hogs Radio Network, brought to you by theroadhogs.com and Road Hogs Motorcycle Magazine. Let's get the show started. Here's your host.
Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of a brand new radio show, Classic Chrome. I'm your host, Buck Carson, and I'd like to welcome everybody. And today's kind of a stellar day for us. We're starting out with the new show, and I'm really hoping we can get some interested folks out there tuning in. This will be a weekly radio show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. You can call in or you can tune in by going to the roadhogs.com and check out the Road Hogs Radio Network, and you'll see a link there for the Classic Chrome Radio Show. Now, all of our shows will also be recorded, so if you can't listen to the live version, you can listen to the podcast version by going to the same place. The purpose behind this radio show, I'm excited to announce, is going to be that our topic is all vintage motorcycles. Anything you ever wanted to know about vintage motorcycles and the community around them, this is the place to talk about it. I'm very involved in vintage motorcycles myself, have been since a young age, and it's a very wonderful world, and it's a very clean and fun world. The best thing I can say about vintage motorcycles is that it's keeping history alive and history on the road. So with this show, we're going to have many different topics over the next few months and few years, hopefully, and we'll range from talking about how to buy motorcycles, old motorcycles, how to work on them, where to find your parts, destination locations, and meet some of the people involved in the many different aspects of the vintage motorcycle world, from racing to auctions to museums, to so on and so forth. There's a lot of great stories out there, and I look forward to sharing them with you folks. Tonight, for the very first show, is a good friend of mine out of Boonton, New Jersey. His name is Rob Nussbaum, and he runs Retrocycle, which is a very fantastic shop. If you are involved in antique Harleys or Indians, Rob is your guy on the East Coast to help you find parts, do any kind of work on them, or do full restorations.
Well, look, first, congratulations on having the show. I hope you do a great job with it, as I know you will. And I'm flattered to be your first guest on the show. So thanks a lot for having me on.
Well, I couldn't think of anybody better, buddy. Rob and Retrocycle are Rob's a very good friend of mine, and Retrocycle is one of my favorite places. Rob and his team there have done some very fantastic things over the years and projects with vintage Harleys and Indians. And one of his most notable conquests recently is helping to build 2 motorcycle cannonball bikes. And for those of you who don't know what the motorcycle cannonball is, it's a coast-to-coast endurance run for motorcycles that are built prior to 1937. And so you have Harleys and Indians and BSAs and Triumphs and all kinds of old motorcycles that are still out there and conquering the roads. And over 16 or 17 days, they go from one end of the United States to the other. We actually just completed the motorcycle cannonball in September. I was fortunate enough to be on it myself. And Rob had prepared 2 of the motorcycles on it. 2 other good friends of mine, Buzz Canner from American Iron Magazine and Paul Ozzie from Long Island, and they had both ridden Harley-Davidsons. Buzz was on a 1936 Harley-Davidson VLH, an 80-inch flathead, and Paul Ozzie was on a 1925 Harley JD, an intake over exhaust twin, and they both did very well thanks to the help that Rob and his crew there at Retrocycle provided. Very cool. Tell us about Harbor Vintage.
Harbor Vintage is an antique motorcycle shop in northern Vermont, and it's run by David Rat Shirk. He's known as Rat, and to me he's known as Pop. And when I first wound up in Vermont in college, I stumbled into what was then the Road Chop Shop, a little chopper shop in the area. And later on, he opened up his Harbor Vintage, and they specialize in nothing but American antique motorcycles. And I kind of always joke that I'm the only one to graduate the University of Vermont with a degree in Harley-Davidson. And that's where the passion started for me. I had a 1966 Sportster, and everybody hated Sportsters up there, and they come in and they gave me their parts.
So funny.
Yeah, it was too funny. You ride these old Sportster pieces of garbage, right? Yeah. I got a bunch of parts. You want them? Yeah. So that's kind of how I got started. And from there, it was just tinkering with various other antiques and learning a craft.
Well, that's very cool. That's a great story, starting off when you're young. So tell me about Retrocycle. How long has that been around? And tell me a little bit about the business, where you're located, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Well, we're in Boonton, New Jersey. We have an internet site, retrocycle.com, and we do parts online. We do service. We help people with technical aspects. So, when you call our shop, you don't get voice prompts. Somebody answers the phone and talks to you. And most likely, everybody who answers the phone is a motorcyclist who can speak knowledgeably with you. And if not, they will get somebody. That's our business. We've been around for about 10 years. I did it as a hobby for years and years, and had a bike in the Guggenheim exhibit at Rockefeller Center. And I always kind of did it on the side. I worked as a film technician in New York City and did this on the side, and I decided, you know what, I want to do this full-time about 10 years ago. So we're in our 10th year, actually in our 11th year now, and things are going pretty good.
So you stay pretty busy all year round, even with those cold New England winters you guys get, huh?
Well, we're not exactly in New England here in New Jersey, so to all you New England folks out there, yes, we're in the Northeast. Interestingly enough, the past few years have been a little slow because of the economy. But this is the first November I can remember where we're actually swamped with work. We've got a 29 JD we're working on right now and a couple of panheads, and looks like it's going to be a good year.
I was telling the audience a little bit about your Cannonball involvement. Can you kind of tell everybody a little bit about the bikes you built and some of the people that you have there working for you?
Okay, well, that was a lot of fun to do the Cannonball stuff. We got approached by Buzz Cantor in around this time last year to overhaul his 1936 VLH. And so we took it down to the bare frame and did just about every nut and bolt on the bike and put it back together without touching the patina of the bike. So we wanted to maintain the original look, but make sure that every nut and bolt and bearing was good on the motorcycle. And Buzz did a 6-month story on the shop rebuilding his bike leading up to the Cannonball event. And then he suggested his partner, Paul Ozzie, come into our shop with his 25 JD and have us do some work for him. So we didn't do the motor over, but we did the transmission. We built an extra trans for him. And then we did all the bearings in the neck and redid the front end so he would have a front brake, adapted a front wheel. And it was myself and a friend of mine, Ryan Stalter, who's an excellent young mechanic who I just can't say enough about Ryan. He actually can't sleep at night if he doesn't know the answer to something. He'll stay up all night on the internet or digging into books or calling people. He's just phenomenal. And it's nice and refreshing to have a young man like him and yourself, Buck, who are interested in antique motorcycles.
Well, I appreciate you, Rob, and you are very fortunate. You've got a stellar team there at Retrocycle. I know I've done a lot of business with you over the past couple of years, and it's always been a pleasure. And I really look forward to many more experiences us together. So the purpose of our show here is to kind of talk about old bikes, but more importantly, to help people who may not have an old bike who want to get involved, kind of lead them in the right direction. So if it was you and somebody had come into Retrocycle and they were saying, Rob, I see all these old panheads and knuckleheads and they're really cool, but I don't know how to get one. How would you best guide them on the search to find an old Harley or an old Indian?
Well, the first thing I would do is try to ascertain what they're trying to achieve. And we get a lot of young guys in who want to buy, they're enamored with the knuckleheads and the panheads, and they've got to have them. And then they see the price tag and they're like, I can't get involved with antique motorcycles. When I was younger, it was Hendersons, Super X's, Militaires, Militors, exotic older motorcycles, and we could buy panheads and knuckleheads, which were virtually interchangeable in those days. If you had $900 to $1,000, you could buy a panhead or a knuckle, but everybody kind of wanted a panhead because it was better performance machine. I would suggest to anybody younger today to start looking at the early Evos. And I think it's an affordable way to get into the antique motorcycle circuit. Keeping in mind that I guess this coming year, 1980, will be considered an antique motorcycle.
That's right,
So,
according to the Antique Motorcycle Club of America, which the rules state you have to be 35 years or older. So
yeah, now a lot of people will say that, okay, well, 1980 is not 35 years, but the introduction to the 1980 models came in 1979. So that's, people kind of forget that kind of time frame. So I would suggest to younger folks either old Ironhead Sportsters are still very affordable, and the Evos are going to come into their own. I'll tell you, if I was 20 or 30 years younger, I would be buying Evos, early Evos, right now.
Well, that's very excellent advice. Now, let me ask you this. I know we had talked earlier about you supplying parts. Your parts, do a lot of them fit? Are they new old stock parts? Are they reproduction parts? Because I get a lot of questions from folks out there who say, you know, I've got this old panhead and I can't find parts anywhere. Where do you find parts? Is it true that there's a lot of new old stock stuff out there that people can readily access, or do they have to kind of go with the reproduction stuff? And what's your best guide there on that?
Okay, my best guide is reconditioned parts first. The problem with new old stock is the price is very high. Now, new old stock, I don't know, some of your audience may not be familiar with the term, meaning it's new inventory that sat on a dealer's shelf for years and years and never got sold. So it's brand new, but it's old stock inventory. Anyway, clearing that up, the problem with new old stock is that once you take it out of the box, it's not new old stock anymore. Now, there are purists who have to have that brand new item that's never seen the light of day since it's been packaged. My feeling is to find good, old, usable Harley parts and recondition them. And you'd be surprised how much of that is available and can be reconditioned. Okay, and then after that, there's the aftermarket. Now, there's a lot of people who complain about a certain manufacturer out there who the parts don't fit. Well, that's always been the case no matter who you bought from the aftermarket. And you have to learn how to make the stuff fit. And without that certain manufacturer, the Antique Motorcycle Club wouldn't actually be functioning or thriving as much as it is today. So you take the good with the bad, you try to find out how to make the bad good, or you look for a new source. So that's my advice on that topic.
Well, that's all excellent advice. Now, we're getting close to running out of time, but before we go, tell me, Rob, what out of all the bikes you've owned over the years and all the bikes you've worked on, what has either been your favorite bike to own and ride, or your favorite bike that you've worked on with Retrocycle or at Harbor Vintage, or anything in between there?
Well, I've owned JDs, Knuckleheads, Panheads, and a 66 Sportster. My favorite is the Knucklehead, as is to a lot of people. I mean, all of a sudden the Knucklehead is the ideal bike to own. I really like that bike, and I'd have to say it's my favorite, and we've done quite a few at the shop. So I'm going to go with the Knucklehead.
Well, that's pretty fantastic. Now, once again, where can people go to find out more about Retrocycle or get in touch with you? What's your website?
Our website is retrocycle.com, or they can email us at inquiries@retrocycle.com, or more easily, they can pick up the phone and call us at 973-291-8588.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, Rob, I really appreciate your time tonight.
One last thing, Buck, we're also on Facebook, Retrocycle.
That's right, and that seems to be where the social media is heading these days, is leading the charge.
Well, there's the siren, Buck, so it sounds like we're going to have to go, huh?
Yeah, that's it, man. Well, thank you very much, Rob, and we'll be talking to you soon. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, you can tune in to Classic Chrome every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central on the Road Hogs Radio Network at www.roadhogs.com. That'll do it for us this week, and we appreciate you tuning in for the very first show. Thank you, and have a good one.